The wind moaned through the charred beams of the collapsed shrine. The sky was drowned in a violet haze. Rain didn't fall on the earth. It fell only on Musashi, as if the heavens themselves had singled out his loneliness. That night, Musashi didn't lose something. He lost everything. His home, his companions, his name, his armor, his sword, even his shadow. There was no one left in the world who remembered him. Except one thing. One single thing remained. Discipline. And sometimes, for a man to be reborn, one thing is all he needs. Musashi sank to his knees. His fingers dug into the mud. The rain slapped his face, but he did not move. Once he had won over 60 duels without a single defeat. Tonight, he couldn't even protect his own life. Is everything truly gone? He whispered. The rain didn't answer. The world didn't answer. Only silence. And in that silence, for the first time in his life, Musashi heard something whisper back. Begin again. Begin. But how? No sword, no coin, no family, no past, no identity. Yet something inside him kept saying, rise. Musashi pushed himself upright. He didn't stand tall. He simply refused to fall further. Discipline begins this way. A breath's worth of movement from a darkness finger thick. As the sky darkened further, Musashi walked. Wind coiled in violet mist. Trees swayed like ghosts. The sky looked torn apart, like a Makoto Shinkai frame frozen at the edge of heartbreak. Without the comedy of Gintama, only the weight of tragedy. Everything is gone, but I am still here. It was the first complete sentence he formed that night. He reached a river swollen from the rain. He wanted to see himself reflected in the water. But even the river rejected him, its surface shattering the moment he leaned over. His reflection felt like a stranger's. If you've taken everything from me, he murmured, then reshape me. His loss wasn't his life. It was his former self. And that loss was the birth cry of another identity. Musashi knelt before the river, not as a defeated man, but as raw steel waiting to be forged. Tonight was the night of his remaking. No title, no weapon, no name. Every battle he had ever fought was against an opponent. This one was against the emptiness inside him. The beginning of the path. Before dawn, he continued walking. The rain had stopped, but the sky stayed bruised purple. It matched the fog tightening around his mind. He stepped deeper into the forest, hearing nothing but his own breath. To walk without a sword, This was a nakedness he had never known. He touched the bark of a cedar tree. It was rough, firm, unyielding. "Strength is like this," he said softly. "Hard outside, fed by roots you cannot see." He didn't know what his roots were anymore, but he knew he had to find them. Discipline is the only inheritance a man cannot lose. That day, for the first time, he understood. A valley opened before him, and Musashi whispered, "I will return." He didn't know to whom he said it. To himself, to the universe, to the ghost of his past. A voice echoed inside his skull. "Musashi, you are running." It was a memory. His old master had told him this once, but the boy he had been was now a shattered man. "I'm not running. I am rebuilding." Even he didn't believe the words. Loss hollowed the man, and the hollow heart cannot hear itself clearly. Still, he walked, because walking is a samurai's prayer, and every prayer must pass through darkness. His darkness was deep. Even the specters of his former victories had abandoned him. Confronting the dark, he reached the mouth of a cave, black as a wound. It seemed to say, "Enter and find yourself." Musashi stopped. Cold wind struck his cheek. Who am I? He had never asked this question with such weight. The cave swallowed him in one step, then another, and a breath. The darkness inside was different. It didn't hide the world. It hid him from himself. A vision surfaced in his mind. The old Musashi, proud, undefeated, unshaken. But that man was dead. For the new Musashi to live, the old one had to be buried. The silent scream. Musashi knelt in the center of the cave. He opened his mouth and screamed without sound. A scream aimed at the universe. Everything is gone, and yet I remain. What does that mean? The darkness answered. It means you can be remade. He closed his eyes. For the first time, he was grateful for his losses, because emptiness meant space to fill. Loss meant room to build. If nothing is left, he whispered, then I can become anything. That sentence was the spark of his rebirth.
Rain followed Musashi, as if the sky itself mourned with him. It slid down the frayed edges of his travel cloak, cooled in the cracks of the old road, and drummed softly on the steel he no longer wished to touch. His two swords, once extensions of his soul, now felt like strangers that had stayed too long. For the first time in many years, Musashi wondered, if a warrior loses everything, does the blade still know who he is? He walked in silence, boots sinking into wet soil, the world around him blurred like an unfinished ink painting. Travelers passed him on the road, but none recognized the legend beside them. His presence, once heavy and electric, now seemed to dissolve into the mist. He felt like a shadow carrying the memory of a man. The only thing that remained intact was the discipline woven into his bones. That could not be taken. Chapter 5. Memories like broken glass. Night came. Musashi took shelter beneath a ruined Torii gate, its red paint stripped by time and storms. The remnants of a shrine surrounded him, shattered stone lanterns, a fallen roof beam, offerings long since washed away. He sat. The rain softened, and his mind, like an uninvited spirit, dragged him backward, to the house that no longer existed, to the faces he would never see again, to the moment the flames swallowed everything he loved. He had heard people say that a warrior must be ready to lose all attachments, but no amount of readiness could prepare a man for the sound of a collapsing home, or the smell of smoke mixed with the memories of those who once laughed inside it. Musashi closed his eyes. The pain came like a blade pressed slowly into the chest, cold, patient, merciless. He didn't run from it. He let it cut. Loss is a forge, he whispered to himself. Let it temper you, or it will break you. Tonight, the darkness did not win, but it did not lose either. Chapter 6. The Monk on the Broken Steps. At dawn, the rain paused long enough for the clouds to pull apart. From the mist, a bent old monk emerged, holding a broom made of twine and bamboo. He swept the entrance steps of the ruined shrine, steps that could not be cleaned, steps that no longer led anywhere. Musashi watched him for a long moment before speaking. You sweep a place that has already fallen apart, Musashi said. The monk didn't look up. That is why it must be swept. Musashi tilted his head. There is no temple left. The monk smirked. Then it will be the cleanest ruin in the province. The warrior felt something stir in his chest, something faint, like the first ember in cold ashes. Why continue? Musashi asked. Now the monk paused, his broom held lightly in his wrinkled hands. When life collapses, a man needs at least one thing he refuses to abandon, or he will abandon himself. Musashi felt the word strike deeper than any blade. The monk finally looked up, and his eyes narrowed slightly. You carry a great storm inside you, wanderer. Musashi did not deny it. The monk nodded at the swords at Musashi's hip. And yet, your blades shine clean. You still care for them. Musashi exhaled through his nose. Reflex, habit, discipline, the monk corrected. The only thing that survives fire. For the first time in weeks, Musashi bowed. A small bow, but sincere. Chapter 7. A Path Without a Name. The monk pointed at the forest path ahead. There is a village beyond the ridge, still standing for now. For now, Musashi asked. They have trouble with bandits, too many weapons in the wrong hands. Musashi said nothing. He had trained himself never to interfere unless necessary. The monk studied him. You walk like a man who has stopped looking for purpose, but purpose is looking for you. Musashi's jaw tightened. Purpose. He once had it. It had burnt away. Still, he bowed to the monk and turned toward the path. The monk called out after him, Wanderer, a final word. Musashi stopped. There are two kinds of warriors. One fights to win. The other fights because he cannot knowingly let the world rot. Musashi said nothing, but the truth hung in the rain-heavy air. Even when stripped of everything, his spirit refused to become a man who looked away. He walked, not toward glory, not toward redemption, but toward the next moment where discipline would decide who he was. Not pain, not memory, not loss, only discipline. The thing Musashi had left. The thing no fire could destroy. Chapter 8. Footsteps toward an unknown war. The forest swallowed him. Mist curled between the trees like pale ghosts. The morning light broke in thin, sharp fragments. Every sound felt amplified. The crack of a branch, the droplet sliding off leaves, the slow rhythm of Musashi's breathing. He did not know what awaited him in the village. He did not know what role fate intended to carve into his path. But he knew this. Discipline was the only lantern he carried through the dark. And it would be enough, as long as he kept walking. The river mist thickened as Musashi crossed into the forest's shadow. His breath visible, his pulse slow but alive. The night did not welcome him, it tested him. Every sound, even the soft drip of water from cedar needles, echoed like an accusation. He carried nothing now. No blades, no students, no reputation. Only discipline walked beside him. And though that discipline remained unbroken, his spirit trembled along its edge. The forest of echoes. The forest floor was soft and uneven, buried under centuries of fallen needles. Musashi's feet sunk with each step, leaving faint impressions that vanished in the shifting mist. It felt like walking through memory. A faint sound drifted through the trees, a distant crack, not a branch, a footstep. Musashi didn't turn his head, didn't reach for a weapon he no longer carried. He simply listened. His teacher had once said, "The first enemy to fear is the one within hearing, not sight." Another footstep, closer. Musashi inhaled, and the air of the forest filled him, gold, sharp, clean. He spoke without turning. "I know you are there." Silence, then a soft young voice. "Master, is it truly you?" Musashi froze. Not from fear, from pain. Because he knew that voice, fragile, trembling, and impossibly familiar. The ghost that was not a ghost. A small figure emerged from the fog. A boy, no older than 13. Thin, bruised, dust on his clothes, and in his hands a wooden practice sword, carved in the style Musashi once taught. The boy bowed so deeply, his forehead nearly touched the earth. He said, "I followed your path for 7 nights. They said you abandoned us, that everything was lost." Musashi finally turned. He expected a ghost. Instead, he saw something far more dangerous. Hope. The boy's eyes were filled with it. Wild, desperate hope that hurt to look at. Musashi's voice was measured. "Why follow a man who has nothing left?" The boy didn't hesitate. "Because you taught us that strength is not what you hold, but what you refuse to surrender." The words cut Musashi deeper than any blade had. For a moment, he was no longer in the forest. He was back in the dojo he had built, hearing laughter, swords lashing, students rising after every fall.
Those echoes pressed against his ribs until breathing hurt. The boy lifted the wooden sword. "Master, I don't want you to teach me techniques. I want you to teach me how to stand when my whole world collapses." Musashi's jaw tightened because he didn't know if he still could. The test without a blade. "Show me what you have learned." The boy nodded, stepping into stance. Feet slightly off, shoulders too tight, but the intention was there. He swung once, twice, 3 times, each strike sharp, but lacking center. Musashi watched, unmoving. After the final swing, the boy lowered his sword. "I practiced every night as you taught." Musashi stepped forward and tapped the boy's chest with 2 fingers. "Your blade shakes because your heart shakes." The boy swallowed. "Then teach me how to stop it." Musashi shook his head. "No, feel it instead." The boy looked confused. Musashi pointed to the trees. "Do you hear the forest?" The boy listened, the wind brushing needles, water dripping, distant insects humming. "Yes. Do you hear me breathing?" Another pause. "Yes, faintly." Musashi stepped so close their foreheads nearly touched. "Then hear your fear as well. Do not fight it. Do not run from it. Let it exist until it no longer controls the blade." The boy's breath quivered. Musashi placed his hands on the practice sword, not guiding them, anchoring them. Discipline is not silence. It is choosing which voice to answer. The boy trembled, but this time did not break. And in that moment, Musashi saw a reflection of himself long before he ever became Musashi. A child clutching a wooden sword, shaking, afraid, but refusing to put it down. The offer Musashi did not expect. The boy straightened. "Master, if you have truly lost everything, then let me follow you." Musashi's breath caught. A student now, when he was nothing but a man walking wounded through mist and memory? He shook his head. "You do not understand the road I walk." The boy stepped forward. "Then let me walk behind you." Musashi closed his eyes. Behind him, so the boy could watch, learn, carry the discipline forward even if Musashi failed. It was a dangerous offer, and a beautiful one. But the forest waited for his decision. Musashi opened his eyes. "If you follow me," he said quietly, "I will fail." The boy nodded. "Then I will learn how to rise." The mist swirled around them. Musashi felt something shift inside him. Not healing, not redemption, but direction. And for the first time since losing everything, he felt his steps aligned with something more than survival. He turned toward the depths of the forest. "Then follow." The boy bowed once, then walked behind him, one careful step at a time, matching Musashi's rhythm. 2 silhouettes fading into the white, one tall and steady,
one small but unyielding, a broken master, an unbroken student, and the discipline that bound them. The river mist thickened as Musashi crossed into the forest shadow, his breath visible, his pulse slow but alive. The night did not welcome him. It tested him. Every sound, even the soft drip of water from cedar needles, echoed like an accusation. He carried nothing now. No blades, no students, no reputation. Only discipline walked beside him. And though that discipline remained unbroken, his spirit trembled along its edge. 1. The Forest of Echoes. The forest floor was soft and uneven, buried under centuries of fallen needles. Musashi's feet sank with each step, leaving faint impressions that vanished in the shifting mist. It felt like walking through memory. A faint sound drifted through the trees, a distant crack, not a branch, a footstep. Musashi didn't turn his head, didn't reach for a weapon he no longer carried. He simply listened. His teacher had once said, "The mist thinned as dawn approached, bleeding pale silver across the forest." Musashi walked with measured steps, the boy trailing behind him with quiet determination. Their breaths rose in faint clouds, two fragile threads of warmth in a world still half asleep. Nothing spoke, nothing moved, yet the air carried a weight Musashi recognized instantly. They were not alone. 1. The unseen circle. Musashi's pace slowed. He didn't stop, didn't turn. He simply listened to the branches above, to the wet soil underfoot, to the emptiness between each heartbeat. The boy whispered, "Master, what is it?" Musashi lifted a hand. Silence fell. The forest answered a moment later. A faint ruffle, a shifting of pressure, the soft scrape of steel against wood. Surrounded, Musashi exhaled. Not fear, not surprise, just acknowledgement. "Step behind me," he murmured. The boy obeyed instantly, the trust so complete it struck Musashi's chest like a quiet ache. And that was when the figures emerged. 6 shapes, faces half-shrouded, armor mismatched, eyes sharp with hunger for coin. Bandits, but disciplined enough to sense danger. One of them spat into the dirt. "The wonder with no blade," he sneered. "The gods gift us an easy morning." Musashi stood unarmed. He didn't flinch, didn't shift, even as the men tightened their circle around him. The boy's breathing quickened. Musashi whispered, just loud enough for him to hear, "Do not fear what approaches. Fear losing yourself." 2. The boy's first fire. The bandit leader stepped forward, katana drawn, a crude weapon, poorly balanced, dangerous in the hands of someone reckless. "Money, food, whatever you have left." Musashi's reply was a calm truth. "I have nothing." A few of the bandits laughed. The leader raised his sword. "Then we take." A branch snapped. The boy startled. The leader smirked. Even the kid shakes. Pathetic. Musashi turned his head slightly. "He shakes because he still feels. You should fear those who no longer do." The leader scoffed, but something in Musashi's eyes, steady, empty of fear, quiet as the deep water, made him hesitate. Only for a breath,
A single heartbeat. Then the leader lunged. 3. The discipline that remains. The blade flashed toward Musashi's throat. The boy gasped, but Musashi moved. Not with speed, not with force, with discipline. That precise and absolute stillness that precedes the perfect step. He shifted a single foot's width, tilted his weight, let the blade pass across the air where he had been a moment before. The leader stumbled forward. In the same motion, Musashi reached out, caught his wrist, used the momentum to pull him down. Then hit the ground with a thud, his sword skittering away. Not before understanding what had happened, Musashi stepped back into stillness, breathing calm, eyes sharp, empty hands more dangerous than steel. The circle of bandits faltered. One hissed, "He's unarmed, finish him." 2 attacked at once. Musashi didn't evade this time. He advanced, a hand to the first man's elbow, dislocating it with a swift downward twist, a knee to the second man's ribs, dropping him breathless to the dirt. The boy watched, eyes wide, heart pounding with both fear and awe. Musashi didn't glance back. He couldn't. The boy see, let him witness the truth. Discipline fights even when everything else is gone. 4. The moment that changes a student. 3 bandits remained. They hesitated because Musashi stood for them not as a broken wanderer, but as a man who had shed everything except the core of who he was. One bandit muttered, "He has no sword. Why does he still move this way?" Another whispered, "This is the demon of the 2 skies." Musashi cut him off quietly. "That man is gone." The forest swallowed the words. The final 3 attacked together. Musashi didn't aim to kill. He disarmed, redirected, dropped them to their knees with the cold efficiency of a man who had lived in battle longer than they'd been alive. When the last bandit fell, whimpering and coughing, Musashi stepped back. The fight had lasted less than 10 breaths. The boy stared at him, not with fear, not with awe, with realization. "Master, you fought without anger." Musashi answered, "I give anger to the blade owns me. But if I give discipline to my hands, I own every moment." The boy bowed deeply, and for the first time, Musashi felt the quiet weight of responsibility return, not as a burden, but as a compass. 5. The road ahead. The bandits scattered, limping into the forest, leaving silence behind them. The boy looked at the fallen swords. "Should we take one?" His voice was small, uncertain. Musashi shook his head. "A sword taken in fear becomes a curse." "So how will we fight the next danger?" He gazed down the path, a long stretch of forest bathed in pale dawn light. "With the same thing that brought you to me." "My Karib." Musashi placed a hand gently on the boy's shoulder. "Your conviction." The forest seemed to open, as if acknowledging their passage. 2 figures continued forward, one carrying the weight of loss, the other carrying the hope of becoming, both bound by the same silent thread. Discipline, even when the world has been stripped bare.
The forest gave way to open sky by midday. Rain clouds gathered above, heavy, purple-gray, trembling with the promise of a storm. A distant rumble rolled across the hills like a restless beast. Musashi paused on the ridge, the wind pushing his hair back, the boy stopping a few steps behind him. For a moment, neither moved. The world around them felt stretched, quiet, expectant, as if it knew what was coming. "Muster." The boy's voice was carried away by the wind. Musashi didn't answer at first. He simply stared at the horizon, as if searching for something he had lost, or something he feared he might find. Finally, he spoke. Not to the boy, not to the wind, to himself. "This storm feels familiar." 1. A storm Musashi cannot ignore. The first cold raindrop landed on Musashi's cheek, then another. Soon the sky broke open, not gently, but like a blade splitting the world in two. Rain hammered the earth, the wind howled, the path became mud beneath their feet. The boy shielded his eyes with his sleeve. "We should find shelter." Musashi shook his head. "No. This is the storm we must walk through." The boy's confusion cut through the air. "But why? It's dangerous." Musashi finally turned towards him, water streaming down his face. "Because discipline is not forged in calm skies." The boy hesitated, then nodded. They walked, side by side, rain shifting the world into a blur of grays and shadows. 2. The wind that shares a memory. Halfway across the open valley, Musashi slowed. The boy noticed immediately. "Master, what is wrong?" Musashi closed his eyes, but what he saw was not darkness. It was memory. A battlefield, wind screaming, rain mixing with blood, bodies scattered like fallen leaves, and among them, a single figure standing tall. Not an enemy, not a friend. A man Musashi had never defeated. A man who had changed the course of his life more than any other. The boy touched his sleeve gently. "Master, did this storm remind you of someone?" Musashi opened his eyes. The storm blurred the world, but his voice cut through cleanly. "Yes." The boy waited. Musashi continued. "A warrior who taught me the cost of winning and the danger of becoming what you fear." Lightning tore open the sky, illuminating the valley in a violent flash. The boy flinched. Musashi did not, because in his mind, he was not standing in the rain. He was standing in a memory he could never escape. 3. The duel buried under years. The rain thickened, turning the path into a river of mud. Musashi walked through it without hesitation, boots sinking deep with each step. The boy struggled behind him, slipping twice before catching himself. But he didn't complain, didn't ask to stop. That alone made Musashi slow his pace. They moved through the storm together. Musashi's voice eventually rose, almost drowned by the thunder. He was the first man I fought who did not fear death. The boy's eyes widened through the rain. "Did you defeat him?" Musashi answered softly. "No." And that was his gift to me. The boy blinked, not understanding. Musashi continued. Any victory gained through arrogance rots the soul. He showed me that strength means nothing without restraint. He paused, and that one day I would face a loss far greater than a duel. The words unsettled the boy. Master, what did you lose? Rain dripped from Musashi's chin. Everything. 4. The storm's real lesson. Lightning shattered the sky again, closer this time. Musashi lifted his gaze towards the storm, and this time he smiled slightly. Not with joy, with acceptance. Listen, boy. The boy leaned closer, straining to hear. A man should welcome storms. Thunder rolled. Musashi continued, voice unshaken. Because storms expose your cracks, your fear, your illusions, your self-deception. The boy swallowed hard. Musashi's tone softened. If the storm terrifies you, good. It means you still have something to confront. A heavy gust nearly knocked the boy off his feet. Musashi caught his wrist and steadied him with ease. Stand. The boy planted his feet, trembling. Musashi nodded. Good. Now walk forward. Together they pushed into the storm. Each step deliberate, each breath a small act of defiance. The storm did not ease, but the boy's fear did. 5. The mountain appears. Through the veil of rain, the landscape shifted. The valley ended, and rising before them, tall, jagged, ancient, was a mountain blackened by age and storms. The boy gasped. Musashi's eyes hardened. So it still stands. The boy looked up at him. What is this place? Musashi's answer came like a distant blade sliding from its sheath. The mountain where I ended my old life. The boy shivered, not from cold, from the quiet enormity of what he felt in Musashi's voice. Master, why are we here? Musashi stepped forward, rain pounding his shoulders. Because before I can teach you discipline, I must face what remains of mine. Lightning cracked behind the mountain. Thunder answered a moment later, shaking the ground beneath their feet. The boy stared in awe. Musashi walked towards the mountain path, a narrow trail carved in stone like an ancient scar. He didn't look back. Come, this storm is only the beginning.
The final stretch of the mountain was not a path. It was a test, a raw slab of stone angled steeply upward, rain flooding over it in rivers. Lightning illuminated the surface in violent flashes, revealing deep gouges carved by centuries of storms. No human footprint lasted long here. No hesitation survived. Musashi climbed first. The boy followed, fingers gripping cold stone, nails scraping as the mountain tried to pull him back down. The wind roared like a living thing, angry, relentless, ancient. Halfway up, the boy shouted over the storm, "Master, why must transformation hurt?" Musashi didn't slow. If it doesn't hurt you, it doesn't change you. The boy slipped. His fingers clawed at the slick stone. For a heartbeat, he dangled over nothing but black mist and the roar of wind tearing at his clothes. Musashi didn't reach for him. He simply said, "Choose." The boy's teeth clenched. His arm burned. His shoulder screamed. The storm tried to tear him free. But something inside him, something small, something stubborn, something Musashi had been shaping since the day they met, refused to let go. He climbed, not gracefully, but with will. When he reached the plateau, chest heaving, Musashi nodded once, not as praise, as acknowledgement. Good. The mountain accepts you. The boy blinked rain from his eyes. Accepts? Musashi stepped deeper into the storm. Not all men reach the summit. Some are turned back. Some are broken. Some disappear. The boy shuddered, but followed. At the summit center stood a circle of tall, fractured stones. Weathered pillars shaped by wind and time, they ranged like silent judges. Lightning flickered behind them, carving their shadows across the ground in jagged lines. Musashi approached the center. The air felt heavier here, thicker, charged. The boy whispered, "What is this place?" Musashi looked at the stones, remembering. The place where ego dies. The boy frowned. "Your ego?" Musashi's jaw tightened. "Every man's ego." He stepped into the center of the stone circle. Rain hammered him, but he stood tall, unmoving, eyes closed as if listening to something the boy could not hear. The boy stepped to the edge of the circle. "What do you hear?" Musashi opened his eyes, and for the first time since they had begun climbing, he looked uncertain. The storm twisted its wind around the stones, creating an eerie hum, a low droning vibration like the sound of a giant's bowstring being drawn. The boy felt it in his bones. Musashi breathed slowly, deeply. "Do you know why I climbed this mountain long ago?" The boy shook his head. Musashi stared into the storm as though searching for a memory lodged somewhere in the rain. "I came here to learn how to kill with clarity." The boy's breath caught. But I left with something else. Lightning flickered. A shadow appeared between the storms. A woman's silhouette. Distant, soft, untouched by the storm. The boy gasped. Musashi didn't move. He knew that silhouette. He had buried it long ago. The silhouette stepped forward. Not a monster, not a warrior, not an enemy. A woman with long dark hair, tied back simply, wearing robes soaked through with rain that could not truly touch her. Her face was gentle, sad, alive only in memory. The boy whispered, "Master, who is that?" Musashi's voice trembled for the first time. "Someone I failed to protect." The boy stepped closer to him. "Your wife?" Musashi had never intercepted. "No, a woman I promised to return to, but never did." The figure stood silently, eyes filled with the kind sorrow that no blade could cut through. Musashi spoke to her as if she were still breathing. "You told me that if I continued this path, I would die alone." The storm swallowed his words. He continued, "You were right." The boy's eyes widened. He had never heard Musashi speak with anything resembling regret. The woman's silhouette lifted a hand, reaching not for Musashi, but toward the boy. The boy's heart grunted. "Why me?" Musashi answered without turning, "To show you what this path demands." The boy swallowed. "Does it demand losing everyone?" Musashi closed his eyes. Rain ran down in his face in quiet streams. "If you are careless, yes." A tear, or raindrop, fell from the woman's cheek. She stepped backward, feeling dissolving into the storm like breath in winter. The boy reached out helplessly. "Wait!" But Musashi stopped him with a single raised hand. "Let her go. She belongs to a past I can no longer carry." The boy lowered his head. The storm swallowed the last trace of her. Musashi breathed out, slowly, voice steady again. Temper reforged. This is the summit's lesson. He turned to the boy, eyes fierce, alive. A man cannot move forward if he is chained to who he failed to be. The boy wiped rain from his face. "Master, did this mountain break you?" Musashi looked around the stone circle. Lightning roared overhead. He shook his head. "No, it unmade me, and then I chose who I would become." He stepped closer to the boy. "Now it is your turn." The boy froze. "Mine?" Musashi nodded. Every warrior must unmake himself before he can rise. The boy's voice wavered. "But I'm not ready." Musashi cut him off gently. "No one ever is." The storm quieted, not stopped, just listened. Musashi placed a hand over the boy's heart. "Step into the circle." The boy looked at the ancient stones, the shadows between them, the emptiness inside them. His voice cracked. "What will I see?" Musashi answered softly, "Yourself." Lightning flashed, and the boy stepped forward.
The final stretch of the mountain was not a path. It was a test. A raw slab of stone angled steeply upward, rain flooding over it in rivers. Lightning illuminated the surface in violent flashes, revealing deep gouges carved by centuries of storms. No human footprint lasted long here. No hesitation survived. Musashi climbed first. The boy followed, fingers gripping cold stone, nails scraping as the mountain tried to pull him back down. The wind roared like a living thing, angry, relentless, ancient. Halfway up, the boy shouted over the storm, "Master, why must transformation hurt?" Musashi didn't slow. If it doesn't hurt, it doesn't change you. 1. A mountain that unbuilds you. The boy slipped. His fingers clawed at the sleek stone. For a heartbeat, he dangled over nothing but black mist and the roar of wind tearing at his clothes. Musashi didn't reach for him. He simply said, "Choose." The boy's teeth clenched. His arm burned. His shoulder screamed. The storm tried to tear him free. But something inside him, something small, something stubborn, something Musashi had been shaping since the day they met, refused to let go. He climbed, not gracefully, but with will. When he reached the plateau, chest heaving, Musashi nodded once, not as praise, as an acknowledgement. Good. The mountain accepts you. The boy blinked rain from his eyes. Accept? Musashi stepped deeper into the storm.
Not all men reach the summit. Some are turned back. Some are broken. Some disappear. The boy shuddered, but followed. 2. The stone circle. At the summit's center stood a tall, fractured stones, weathered pillars shaped by wind and time, arranged like silent judges. Lightning flickered behind them, carving their shadows across the ground in jagged lines. Musashi approached the center. The air felt heavier here, thicker, charged. The boy whispered, "What is this place?" Musashi looked at the stones, remembering. The place where ego dies. The boy frowned. "Your ego?" Musashi's jaw tightened. Every man's ego. He stepped into the center of the stone circle. Rain hammered him, but he stood tall, unmoving, eyes closed, as if listening to something the boy couldn't hear. The boy stepped to the edge of the circle. "What do you hear?" Musashi opened his eyes, and for the first time since they'd begun climbing, he looked uncertain. 3. A voice from before the duels. The storm twisted its winds around the stones, creating an eerie hum, a low, droning vibration like the sound of a giant bowstring being drawn. The boy felt it in his bones. Musashi breathed slowly, deeply. "Do you know why I climbed this mountain long ago?" The boy shook his head. Musashi stared into the storm as though searching for a memory lodged somewhere in the rain. "I came here to learn how to kill with clarity." The boy's breath caught. Musashi continued, "But I left with something else." Lightning flickered. A shadow appeared between the stones. A woman's silhouette, distant, soft, untouched by the storm. The boy gasped. Musashi didn't move. He knew that silhouette. He had buried it long ago. 4. The ghost he feared most. The silhouette stepped forward, not a monster, not a warrior, not an enemy. A woman with long dark hair tied back simply, wearing robes soaked through with rain that could not truly touch her. Her face was gentle, sad, alive only in memory. The boy whispered, "Master, who is that?" Musashi's voice trembled for the first time. "Someone I failed to protect." The boy stepped closer to him. "Your wife?" Musashi shook his head slowly. "No. A woman I promised to return to, but never did." The figure stood silently, eyes filled with the kind of sorrow that no blade could cut through. Musashi spoke to her as if she was still breathing. "You told me that if I continued this path, I would die alone." The storm swallowed his words. He continued, "You were right." The boy's eyes widened. He had never heard Musashi speak with anything resembling regret. 5. The unforgiving truth. The woman's silhouette lifted a hand, reaching not for Musashi, but toward the boy. The boy's heart thudded. "Why me?" Musashi answered without turning. "To show you what this path demands." The boy swallowed. "Does it demand losing everyone?" Musashi closed his eyes. Rain ran down his face in quiet streams. A tear or raindrop fell from the woman's cheek. She stepped backward,
fading, dissolving into the storm like breath in winter. The boy reached out helplessly. "Wait!" But Musashi stopped him with a single raised hand. "Let her go. She belongs to a past I can no longer carry." The boy lowered his head. The storm swallowed the last trace of her. Musashi breathed out slowly, voice steady again, temper reforged. "This is the summit's lesson." He turned to the boy, eyes fierce, alive. A man cannot move forward if he strained to who he failed to be. 6. The warrior reborn. The boy wiped rain from his face. "Master, did this mountain break you?" Musashi looked around the stone circle. Lightning roared overhead. He shook his head. "No, it unmade me, and then I chose who I would become." He stepped closer to the boy. "Now it is your turn." The boy froze. "Mine?" Musashi nodded. Every warrior must unmake himself before he can rise. The boy's voice wavered. "But I'm not ready." Musashi cut him off gently. "No one ever is." The storm quieted, not stopped. "Just listen." Musashi placed a hand over the boy's heart, stepped into the circle. The boy looked at the ancient stones, the shadows between them, the emptiness inside them. His voice cracked. "What will I see?" Musashi answered softly. "Yourself." Lightning flashed, and the boy stepped forward.
The moon hung thin and pale above the valley, like a blade sharpened to transparency. Musashi stood alone, the wind carrying strands of ash-colored dust around his feet. It was quiet, too quiet for a world that had been roaring only hours before. His hands trembled, not from fear, not from exhaustion, but from the weight of everything he had finally allowed himself to feel. For the first time, there was no enemy before him, no duel waiting at sunrise, no reputation to defend, no identity to cling to. Everything that once made him Musashi had been stripped away. Everything except discipline. The last lesson. He sank to his knees, the old wooden sheath tapping lightly against a stone. The sound traveled through the valley like a heartbeat. He remembered the boy he once was, the angry, directionless child who swung sticks at trees, dreaming of becoming strong enough to erase the world that frightened him. Strength had come, victory had come, yet none of it filled the emptiness inside. Not until now. He whispered, "I was wrong about strength. It was never in the sword. It was never in my name. It was always in what remained when both were gone." A memory returns. He recalled the hermit who once told him, "One day, you will be strong enough to lose everything." He laughed back then. Who could possibly be strong in loss? But now, after losing home, students, reputation, purpose, Musashi finally understood. Loss was not destruction. Loss was purification. The river that uproots trees also carves valleys. The wind that tears roofs off also brings spring. And the discipline that survives catastrophe is discipline
that cannot be killed. Rebirth in emptiness. A faint glow stretched across the horizon. Purple tones like ink spreading across rice paper lit the clouds. It reminded him of a distant childhood morning, one where he had nothing, no skill, no future, just hunger and a will to survive. He smiled, a gentle, almost tender smile. "Then it is true," he murmured. "Emptiness is not the end of the path. It is the path." He rose slowly, feeling the earth beneath him as though for the first time. Every grain of sand, every breath of wind felt deliberate, a lesson wrapped in nature's quiet persistence. The world calls again. Footsteps approached, soft, hesitant. It was the boy, the orphan he had saved during the storm. The child's name Musashi still hadn't asked, because names mattered less than spirit. "Master, where will you go now?" Musashi rested the hand on the boy's head. The gesture was awkward, unfamiliar. He had never been good at kindness, not because he lacked it, but because he had never allowed himself to feel it. "I will go where discipline leads me." The boy swallowed. "Then, can I follow?" Musashi turned toward the sunrise. Purple mist bled into soft gold. The sky felt like a promise. He said, "You may walk beside me, but you must never follow. A warrior does not walk behind another. He walks beside the world." The boy nodded, and for the first time in years, Musashi felt something warm expand quietly in his chest. Not pride, not attachment, something simpler. Hope. The final understanding. As they began walking, Musashi glanced back at the valley where he had been broken and rebuilt and reborn. He understood now. Strength was not in his undefeated record, not in the fear his name inspired, not in the sword he carried. Strength was in the discipline that kept him moving after losing every possible safety. Strength was in the willingness to rise when he could have disappeared. Strength was in the courage to face himself. The world had taken everything from Musashi, every possession, every illusion, every comfort, until only one thing remained. The thing no one could strip away, the thing no fire could burn, the thing no defeat could touch. Discipline, the final unbreakable blade, his true weapon. Last line, the ending shot. Shinkai-style cinematic panorama. The camera pulls up, rising over the valley. Purple mist drifts through the pines. A single narrow road cuts through the mountains. Two figures, Musashi and the boy, walk side by side. Small, quiet, but unwavering. Then a final narration fades in. When a man has lost everything, the world expects him to fall. But when he keeps discipline, the world cannot understand why he rises again. Fade to black. End.